Okay, so you know how much we love diving deep into the stuff you're really curious about.
Absolutely.
And this time, you sent us something pretty intriguing, the English Leap podcast episode called How to Be Disciplined.
It is a good one.
Yeah, with Aaron and Evan, right?
Yeah, Aaron and Evan.
So we're going to kind of unpack all that wisdom, all that advice that they shared specifically for building self-discipline,
Right.
which, as we all know, is kind of that magic ingredient.
Yeah.
Whether you're trying to, master English like a lot of our listeners or tackle any other big goal in life.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is sort of the engine
It is.
that drives us towards success in any area.
For sure. And one of the things that I thought was so interesting right from the get-go is how they start the conversation
Yeah.
by posing this like fundamental question.
Yeah.
What is the one thing
Right.
that can really make or break success? And they both land on that answer of self-discipline.
Self-discipline.
And Evan even admits
Yeah.
right away that he's been feeling a little bit off track with his own goals,
Yeah, he's been struggling a little bit.
which I think so many of us can relate to.
Absolutely.
You know, that feeling of like, okay, I had all these great intentions, but things kind of slipped a little.
Life gets in the way.
Life gets in the way.
Yeah.
So our mission in this deep dive is to break down exactly how we can build that self-discipline, take their advice, and stay motivated. They're pulling out like the most valuable stuff that they shared. Okay.
Sounds good.
So first up, Aaron and Evan talk about the power of starting with tiny habits,
Okay.
which I thought was such a smart way to begin.
Yeah, I mean, psychologically it makes sense.
It does.
Start small.
Yeah. And Evan shares this scenario, which I think is so relatable. You know, those big New Year's resolutions?
Yes.
The classic, like, I'm going to exercise for an hour every single day.
Of course. And then
what happened?
February comes around and
You're like, forget it.
you're eating pizza on the couch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyone else been there?
I think we've all been there.
So instead of these, like, huge leaps, they suggest starting with these incredibly small commitments.
Yeah, bite-sized pieces.
Like Evan's example was committing to just 5 minutes of exercise daily.
5 minutes. That's
Yeah.
a minute. You can do anything for 5 minutes.
Exactly. And I love how this connects to language learning, especially for our listeners.
Yeah.
You know, instead of saying, I'm going to study English for an hour every day,
Right.
which can feel so daunting, start with just 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
That could be reading one short article,
Yeah.
listening to one song, or even just learning one new vocabulary word.
It all adds up.
It does. And over time, those 5 minutes
Yeah.
really start to accumulate.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's really great about tiny habits is it like plays into the psychology of how our brains work. You know, like you think about that habit loop.
The cue, routine, reward.
Exactly.
Mm,
So
yeah.
when we're aiming for something massive, that routine part of the habit loop just feels so overwhelming that we don't even start.
We just avoid it altogether.
Right. Exactly. But if it's a tiny habit,
Mm-hmm.
that routine is so small,
Yeah.
so easy.
You're like, oh, I can do that.
I can do 5 minutes.
No problem.
And then you get that little reward and it reinforces the loop.
It does, and you actually build that consistency.
Exactly. And Aaron mentions James Clear's Atomic Habits
Yeah.
in the episode.
Yeah.
And his whole point is to make the habit so small.
So easy. You can't say no.
You can't say no exactly,
It's about that consistency.
more than the intensity,
More than the intensity in the beginning.
at least at the beginning.
Yeah, and I think that's a really powerful shift in mindset
It is.
because it takes the pressure off.
Absolutely.
And, it's like that snowball effect. Once you start rolling it,
yeah,
it just starts to pick up
it
momentum.
builds on itself.
It does. So that brings us to their next big point, which I think builds on this idea beautifully. And that's the importance of focusing on systems,
Okay.
not just goals.
Okay. Systems versus goals.
Such a key distinction.
It is, because goals are that destination.
Right. The thing you want to achieve.
Right. Exactly.
Hmm.
But systems are like the map
Yeah.
and the vehicle.
They get you there.
To get you there without a system,
Yeah.
goals are just kind of like these fantasies floating around.
Yeah. And Evan uses this great example of wanting to lose weight, but not having a concrete plan.
Right. He'd start out all motivated, but then he wouldn't see results right away and get discouraged.
That's so relatable.
Right. It's like, you want to go to Paris, but you have no idea how to get there.
Exactly. And Aaron and Evan define a system as the collection of small daily actions that actually move you towards your goal.
So it's like breaking down that big goal into manageable steps.
Exactly. And I think it's helpful to connect this back to, our listeners who are focused on English learning.
Yeah.
What could a system look like for them?
Let's say your goal is to improve your vocabulary.
Yeah.
Your system could be spending 10 minutes every morning
Right.
reviewing flashcards.
Before you even start your day.
Exactly. Or maybe your goal is to improve your listening comprehension. Your system could be listening to an English podcast during your commute every day.
It's like having that plan.
Yeah, having that roadmap. And the best part about a system is once it's in place, it kind of becomes automatic.
You're not relying on motivation.
Exactly. You're just following the steps.
You've already decided what you're going to do.
You're on autopilot.
You're on autopilot. I love that. So their third tip is all about making those habits attractive.
Okay.
Which I thought was so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to enjoy their habits, right?
Exactly. Make it fun. So Aaron and Evan, they talk about this idea that if you find ways to make the habit enjoyable, you're way more likely to stick with it.
Absolutely. And Evan gives a great example of how he does this with exercise.
Tell me.
He says he listens to his favorite music while he works out.
Okay.
Or he puts on a funny TV show.
He's pairing something he maybe doesn't love as much
Right.
with something he does.
Exactly.
Which is brilliant and so applicable to English learning.
For sure.
You know, instead of forcing yourself to do grammar drills.
Yes.
Right. Which, some people love.
Some people do.
But maybe not everyone's cup of tea.
Right.
Think about ways to make it more engaging.
Yeah.
Watch those English shows you've been meaning to see.
Exactly.
Or listen to some podcasts.
Yep. Or even just reward yourself after a study session.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, like have a piece of chocolate or something.
A little treat.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Aaron talks about the science behind this idea of positive association.
Oh, yeah.
So when you consistently link a beneficial habit with something rewarding, your brain starts to create that positive connection.
But you start to crave the habit.
Yeah, because you anticipate that good feeling.
Dopamine hit.
A little dopamine hit.
Exactly.
So you're actually working with your brain.
You're hacking your brain.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Instead of fighting against it.
Yeah.
So smart. Okay, next up, they talk about the importance of designing your environment for success.
Oh, yeah. This is a big one.
It's often underestimated.
It is. We think, it's all about willpower.
It's all in my head.
But our surroundings have such a huge impact.
Yeah, and Evan shares this experience of being totally distracted by a messy desk.
Oh, yeah.
Or like snacks within reach.
The siren song of the snack drawer.
It's so true. And it's all about making those desired actions easier and the undesirable ones harder.
Exactly. Put those temptations out of sight.
And they give these really practical examples like keeping your workout clothes ready.
Yep. Laid out and ready to go.
Or your gym bag right by the door.
So you literally trip over it on your way out.
You have no excuse.
No excuse.
And for English learning, this could mean keeping your books and your language apps super accessible.
Yep, on your phone's home screen.
Or flashcards somewhere, you'll see them all the time.
On the coffee table.
Exactly, and it's not just about the physical space.
Right.
Aaron also emphasizes the importance of surrounding yourself with supportive people.
Yes. People who lift you up.
People who cheer you on.
And encourage you.
Because that can be such a motivator.
It is. It's like having your own personal cheer squad.
Which leads us perfectly into their fifth key tip.
Okay.
Which is managing your willpower and energy.
Oh, yeah, the willpower thing.
Such a real struggle.
It is.
So they talk about this concept of willpower being a limited resource.
Like a muscle that gets tired.
It does.
You can't just use it endlessly.
And Evan uses that example of having zero willpower left at the end of the day.
Yeah, to resist Netflix.
Or scrolling on your phone or whatever your guilty pleasure is.
Exactly. You've used it all up on making decisions and doing work.
And it's gone. So what does this actually mean for building self-discipline?
Well, it means we need to be strategic about when we tackle those tough tasks.
The things that require a lot of focus.
Exactly like studying English or working on a big project.
So we need to do them when our energy levels are naturally higher.
Usually earlier in the day for most people.
Right. You don't want to try and force yourself to do something that requires a ton of concentration.
Yeah, when you're already drained.
When you're already exhausted.
Just setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, you're going to be way more likely to give in to procrastination.
Exactly.
Or just distraction. So it's all about working with your natural rhythms.
Yeah, riding the wave of your energy.
I like that.
And they also mention automating decisions as much as possible.
Oh, tell me more about that.
So it's basically about reducing the number of decisions you have to make throughout the day.
To conserve mental energy.
Exactly, because every decision we make, even small ones, depletes our willpower a little bit.
So it's like decision fatigue.
It is. So if you can automate those routine decisions.
Like what to eat for breakfast.
Yeah. Or what to wear.
Or what to wear.
You free up mental space for the important stuff.
For the things that really require your focus.
Exactly.
So smart.
And for English learning, this could be as simple as like preparing your study materials the night before.
Okay.
So you don't have to think about it in the morning.
You just grab them, go.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay. And their final piece of advice, which I think brings in that like human element,
Yeah.
is all about leveraging accountability.
Accountability. Oh, it's so important.
It is. And they talk about how having some kind of external support can make a huge difference.
Yeah, Evan talks about how much it helped him to have a workout buddy.
Someone to keep him on track.
Exactly. Or even just a friend who would check in on his progress.
So you're not just relying on your own internal motivation.
Right, because sometimes that motivation wavers.
It does.
But if you know someone's going to ask you about it,
you're more likely to follow through.
You're more likely to show up.
And this can be so valuable for English learners, too.
Absolutely.
Find a language partner.
Yeah, someone to practice with.
Join a study group.
Yep.
Or even just let a friend or family member know about your goals.
And ask them to check in on you.
Yeah.
It's all about creating that external support system.
That sense of responsibility.
Exactly. And Aaron emphasizes that this accountability should be supportive.
Not judgmental.
Right. It's about encouragement and celebrating progress.
Not criticism.
Yeah.
Because that can be really demotivating.
It can.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We've gone through all of Aaron and Evan's key tips.
From tiny habits to systems.
To making habits attractive.
Designing your environment, managing your energy.
Just leveraging accountability.
And as they point out, these principles aren't just for English learning.
Right. They're for any goal.
Any goal you're pursuing in life.
Whether it's personal or professional.
The fundamentals are the same.
Exactly.
So think about this for a moment. How could even just 5 minutes of focused effort each day, guided by a well-designed system and fueled by genuine enjoyment, fundamentally reshape your progress towards those big goals over the coming months?
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is the power of small, consistent actions driven by self-discipline.
That's the magic formula.
That's the magic formula.
Right there.
Right there.
I love it.
Me too.
Super valuable stuff.
So insightful.
Thanks for bringing this one to us.
Absolutely. And thank you to Aaron and Evan for sharing their wisdom on the English Leap podcast.
Definitely check out their podcast if you haven't already.
It's a great one. And thank you for listening to The Deep Dive.
Until next time, keep diving.
Keep diving.